Imagine you just got a raise, a real one, the kind you've been angling for all year. You find out on a Tuesday afternoon, and for about 20 minutes, you feel like a different person. Lighter, a little electric, like something finally clicked into place. You go home, maybe you treat yourself to something nice, you text a friend. Life is good. And then, about 2 weeks later, it's like it never happened. You're back to scanning the prices on menus. You're back to feeling vaguely anxious about your account balance. You're back to thinking, if I just had a little more, things would feel different. But you do have more. You got more. And somehow your brain has already decided that this new number is just normal, unremarkable, the baseline. Here's what nobody tells you. Your brain is not built to let you feel rich. It doesn't matter how much you accumulate. Your mind has a set of built-in mechanisms that will almost always pull the feeling of enough just out of reach. This isn't a character flaw. It's not ingratitude. It's not a failure of mindset. It is psychology. And once you understand it, something genuinely shifts. Let's talk about why you'll never feel as wealthy as you actually are, and what that means for how you live. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the hedonic treadmill. Researchers call it adaptation, but I prefer to think of it as your brain being spectacularly ungrateful on your behalf. The basic idea is this: no matter what happens to you, good or bad, your emotional baseline has a powerful gravitational pull, and you will almost always drift back to it. Win the lottery? Studies of actual lottery winners show that within a year or two, their self-reported happiness levels return to roughly where they were before the windfall. Get paralyzed in an accident? The same strange resilience applies. People adapt downward too, returning closer to baseline than most would predict. Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell first described this as hedonic adaptation back in 1971, and it's been replicated and expanded ever since. Your brain is a normalization machine. That's its job. What felt like luxury last year is just Tuesday now. Think about your first smartphone. Remember the first time you could look up anything from anywhere in seconds? It felt like a superpower. Now, if your phone takes 4 seconds to load a page, you're annoyed. The magic evaporated. The baseline shifted. And your financial life works exactly the same way. But adaptation isn't the only thing working against you. There's something even more insidious at play: social comparison. And I don't mean it in the shallow, jealous way we usually talk about it. I mean it's structurally baked into how your brain assigns value to things. Here's a quick thought experiment. Would you rather earn $70,000 a year while everyone around you earns $50,000, or earn $100,000 a year while everyone around you earns $150,000? Economically, the second option is clearly better. You have more money, you can buy more things. But study after study shows that a significant portion of people choose the first option because relative standing matters deeply to the human brain. We don't experience wealth in absolute terms. We experience it socially, comparatively, relationally. The economist Robert Frank calls this the expenditure cascade. When the people just above you in the income ladder spend more on houses, cars, vacations, it shifts your sense of what's normal. Not because you're petty, but because reference points are how your brain makes sense of value. A $500 dinner feels extravagant in one context and modest in another. The number is the same. The feeling is completely different. And now think about what social media has done to this. You're no longer comparing yourself to your neighbors or coworkers. You're comparing yourself to a globally curated highlight reel of the most aesthetically successful lives on the planet. The reference group your brain is unconsciously benchmarking against has never been wider or more distorted. No wonder so many people with objectively comfortable lives feel quietly, inexplicably behind. There's also something going on at the neurological level that I find weirdly fascinating. Your brain processes gains and losses asymmetrically. This is loss aversion, a concept Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky made famous. And the rough rule of thumb is that losses feel about twice as painful as equivalent gains feel good. Losing $50 stings roughly twice as much as finding $50 feels pleasurable. Which means that even as your wealth grows, you're spending a lot of psychological energy managing the fear of losing what you have. The more you have, the more there is to lose. And the brain keeps the threat register humming. Wealthy people aren't immune to financial anxiety. Often they're more consumed by it. because the stakes in their heads have grown alongside the numbers. The fear scales with the fortune. So what are we left with? A brain that normalizes everything you gain, compares you upward constantly, and feels losses sharper than wins. No wonder contentment feels slippery. No wonder you look at your bank account and feel not quite satisfied, not quite anxious, just kind of neutral, like you're always one threshold away from finally arriving somewhere. But here's the thing I want you to sit with for a moment. These mechanisms aren't design flaws, they're evolutionary features. Adaptation kept your ancestors from getting complacent in dangerous environments. Social comparison kept groups cohesive and competitive. Loss aversion protected resources in a world of actual scarcity. Your brain was built for a very different game than modern financial life, and it's playing its old moves on a new board. Understanding this doesn't mean you stop wanting things or stop working toward them. It means you stop interpreting the feeling of not enough as evidence that you actually don't have enough. Those are different things. Psychologists have identified a few things that genuinely do break through the adaptation cycle, and they're worth knowing. Experiences adapt more slowly than possessions. The memory of a trip, a meal shared with someone you love, a difficult thing you did, these tend to retain their emotional value longer than the new couch or the upgraded car. This isn't a lifestyle prescription, it's just a data point about how your brain prices things. Novelty matters too, but it's costly to sustain. What researchers call variety, small changes, new context, deliberate savoring, can interrupt the normalization process temporarily. The practice of noticing what you have, not as a spiritual exercise, but as a literal cognitive interruption to the comparison circuit, has real psychological backing. And perhaps most importantly, recognizing that the feeling of not enough is a sensation, not a fact. That the treadmill is running whether or not you've earned your way onto the next level. That the moving finish line is a feature of the mind, not of your bank account. You might be watching this and thinking, okay, but if I just had a little more financial security, then I'd feel better. And maybe you would temporarily. Maybe you genuinely do need more right now. Financial stress at the lower end of the income scale is real and distinct from the psychological restlessness we're talking about at higher levels. Scarcity and the feeling of scarcity aren't always the same thing. But for a lot of people, a lot of the time, the chase is less about what money provides and more about what the mind promises it will provide. The feeling of arrival, of safety, of being enough. And that feeling is manufactured somewhere much deeper than a balance sheet can reach. So the reframe isn't be grateful and stop wanting things. That's too simple and honestly a little condescending. The reframe is this. Your brain will almost never spontaneously decide you're doing well enough. That signal doesn't come automatically, which means you might have to decide it yourself, deliberately, against the grain of instinct, in small moments, not as a final conclusion, but as a recurring practice. The treadmill doesn't stop, but you can notice you're on it. And sometimes just noticing is enough to step to the side for a moment, look around, and see how far you've actually come. If this landed for you, if it names something you felt but couldn't quite explain, I'd love to know in the comments. What moment made you realize that more wasn't quite doing what you thought it would? And if you want to keep exploring the psychology of how your brain shapes your relationship with money, success, and enoughness, there's plenty more where this came from.